This is Autism Off Limits. Two women parenting, advocating, and living the parts of autism that rarely get talked about. We go where much of the autistic community and the media won't. Raw stories, real talk, and absolutely off limits. Welcome to our first episode of Autism Off Limits, where we'll be talking about the things that the autism community considers to be off limits. I'm Cindy Wall, and this is my co-host, Kiki Chambers.
On today's episode, we're going to give a little background information on who me and Cindy Wall are and our experience in the autism community and how we became friends.
Let's actually start with just our connection and how we are connected by just a timeline, a very similar timeline. Alex was diagnosed around the same time you were diagnosed. My son is Alex. He has high support needs and lives at home with us. And him and Kiki were diagnosed around the same time. And we talk a lot about what it is that you guys went through in the 90s.
Yeah. And it's really quite close because the diagnosis between us is only 2 years. Like, I was 91 and he was 93. So a lot of the stuff we talk about does really line up.
So thinking of some of our other connections, I just wanted to talk about some of those. So you were early diagnosed. Nonverbal severe autism was your diagnosis.
So my original diagnosis was Caretaker syndrome in 1991. And they were using that vocabulary, like we're slowly moving into what would be the DSM-4. So that vocabulary was being used, but it didn't actually get used, or I became aware of it until I went to school. And I was already in special education, so I thought it was odd, but my mom was immediately pulled into the school and was like, she can't talk. And my mom's like, what do you mean? She never shuts up. And they're like, she has no function of communication. And you could barely understand me. I had a really bad speech impediment. But they said, no, I wasn't trying to communicate, that I was just making noise to make noise. So my mom brought me back to the doctors. And they kind of treated her like she was, what would you say, like a helicopter parent, and was like, yeah, we've already talked to you. It's Caretaker syndrome. She's nonverbal. She has severe autism. Just take her home. And that's kind of how that happened there. But originally it was just Caretaker, and I think they originally diagnosed me with a global delay or something. And then when I was like old enough and started showing more presentations of typical autism or stereotypical autism, they're like, yeah, that's what that is.
So Alex was diagnosed in 1993 with autism, barely got a diagnosis. He was right on the line between typical developing and autism, which now looking back was ridiculous because at 3 years old he wasn't talking at all, and wasn't formulating any kind of 2-3 word sentences, wasn't playing with other kids, but the school diagnosed him back then. The local public school is who gave him a diagnosis of autism. So that's how far back we go into the ancient archives. Were you diagnosed by a doctor or?
Yeah. I was diagnosed at a place called the Glenrose, which is like one of the top tier places to get diagnosed in.
So we live in California, and there's something called the regional center system, and Alex was getting services through the regional center system, early intervention, until age 3. And then at 3, they turned him over to the school district to handle his services. And that's how we ended up getting a diagnosis through the school. But, I was telling his pediatrician since he was 2 years old, that he was delayed and not talking and had to beg them for speech therapy. And then he did get some speech therapy for 6 months between ages 2.5 and 3. And didn't make any progress whatsoever with the speech therapist, and they never once mentioned autism at all.
Well, and the thing I think is so important about your story and sharing Alex's story is important, but there's a certain stuff that you can share that I can't even share about myself, because you can tell even when I tell the earlier part of me getting diagnosed, I was 2 or 3, I don't remember. I know, like, the main details, like, it was the Glen Rose and stuff like that, but with you can be like, yeah, this happened and this happened, because you fully understood what was going around at that time.
So you hear stories from your mom, which are really important to share. What does she say about why you ended up getting a diagnosis, and, like, what was going on that led her to believe you had autism?
I didn't reach any of my milestones. I never crawled, stood up, sat up. So it, like, a very, very delayed, and I was extremely colicky, but my mom tried to figure out why I was extremely colicky, but they didn't see that as a diagnosing thing. So she was always trying to get me help, because she knew she had 2 kids already. She knew that this was not a normal developing thing. But then when I started to be able to move more, I started becoming more aggressive, and not like in a malicious way, but when I could, I started gouging out my own eyes because it was too bright. So, like, I'd be like 3 or 4, maybe even younger, and just try to rip out my own eyes because it was too bright and I didn't understand. So, like, I have, like, scars all over here, which now that I'm getting older is nicer, because people are like, oh, yeah, you got kind of crow's feet. I'm like, yeah, that's what that is. Even the one up here, that's definitely, you know, getting older. That's not me trying to rip out my eyes kind of thing. So she's kind of thing. So that was the big thing. She said, like, any way to soothe me seemed borderline aggressive. And, like, for example, she said, like, she would just sit there and lie under my crib and kick the bottom of my crib as hard as she could. Or she would go on top of the crib and hit my butt. And that wasn't as hard as she could, but she would hit the butt, so I'd bounce. Only way I'd stop crying. Like, the only way she could actually soothe me was, like, rough motions. And that's not typical. Like, it, and kind of thing. Like, it wasn't typical, or, like, extreme swaddling. Like, not your typical nice little swaddle, like, just, like, bear hugging. Like, I never slept. And she's like, that's really weird. She's a newborn. She doesn't sleep. But I also have other conditions that may have caused that. So she said one night she just sat in her kitchen sink breaking glasses because she was just so, like, she had to walk away. She's like, I can't do this. This child is so extremely, like, crying, colicky, screams all the time, doesn't eat, kind of thing, right? And, or she said, like, sometimes she'd go to her foster mom's house, because my mom has a foster mom, and just drop me off and walk away, because she said it was intense. So
when you said she was breaking glasses, I wasn't sure if it was out of frustration or if you liked the sound of the breaking glasses and it was helping you go to sleep.
I think it was just out of
before sound machines, you know.
Yeah, right? She probably should have done it and seen if I'd like it. I was nowhere near the glasses. I was in my crib crying. Sure, yeah. She took a break. Yeah. You know, she did what she needed to do, which is you take a break.
Yeah. So you also were diagnosed nonverbal. So you were having all these issues, and then on top of that, you didn't have any language when you were diagnosed?
Well, so what happened was I had language. I developed typical language. And then I stopped. So that was the final straw that, like, clued in that something was, you know, was autism.
Yeah. Do you know about what age you stopped talking?
I think it was about 2 or 3, because it was around the time I got diagnosed. And I got diagnosed, like, a month shy of me being 3. So 2 or 3. And it was kind of like I still was verbal. Like, I still was verbal, but it was no longer cohesive. Like, there was no, like, it was just noises and stuff. It wasn't, Like, I think when a lot of people think nonverbal, they think we're sitting there being, like, super quiet. Like, no, I was a very loud child. Like, I want to make that super clear. I was never quiet. I was just didn't have functional communication, which I think the community has a hard time understanding the difference between communication is valid, but there is a difference between functional and non-functional communication. And non-functional is when you can't tell a stranger you're hurt, and functional is when you can. Like, and it doesn't matter if you use an AAC device to tell them that you're hurt, that's still functional communication. Mm-hmm. Where you can use as many stuff, you could have words. If you can't tell somebody who hurt you, non-functional.
Like hearing, I'm learning more about you than even what I knew before. So I like doing this. I didn't know these stories. Yeah, so that's really interesting to know that you guys were diagnosed around the same time, but even then had two very different experiences within the diagnosis and how you were diagnosed. Like, I still can't believe the school diagnosed Alex. And, you know, again, it's so ridiculous that he almost didn't get the label, you know, the diagnosis. I remember them telling me, we're going to give it to you just because he can get services, but we're not really sure. It's like, he's 3, he's not potty trained, isn't playing with other kids, can't put words together, just didn't say anything in the last 6 months of his speech therapy, you know, you know.
Yeah. I think the big thing, and I don't know if you felt this, so let me know if you felt that way. I thought the big thing was people didn't want to do it because they thought it was like a life sentence, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. They thought, like, oh, if I diagnose them, it's forever. And it is forever. I've tried multiple times not to disclose I have autism in certain situations that involves my medical records being shown, and they figured it out. So, like, I tried.
No masking for Kiki.
No, someone's going to steal my record and be like, that makes sense. Jesus.
Anything else you want to say about your childhood before we go into some questions for each other?
No. I want to know more about that school system, though, because did they have any professionals, or were it teachers? Like, what were the professionals?
It was probably a school
psychologist.
I don't really remember. But
so the same with me, where I'm like, I don't remember the doctor who diagnosed me. I know her name, but I don't remember what her actual job was.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is they gave him the diagnosis so that he could, quote unquote, get services, and then the services was to dump him into a special day class with, you know, every other disability under the sun, and they had absolutely no idea what to do with him. But obviously I'll be sharing more stories on how we basically took over his education. A little bit about how we didn't like each other when we first were on. So we're both on social media, particularly we met on TikTok, and you and I had certain opinions about each other and
never talked to each other once. Mm-mm. But we had opinions about each other. like classic thing.
Common in parasocial relationships online, yes.
Yeah. And that was a big lesson for me, because it was like, I created all this judgment, not on who Cindy was, but that the fact that I wasn't the hugest Autism Mom fan. Like, I was like, you guys kind of suck over there. Which was, and then God's like, okay, but do you want to be an autism mom? And then I became one, and I was like, oh, whoops.
It's a little different, huh? It's a little different when you're on the other side.
a little. Like, there was this one saying that said, like, like, autism parents would talk about how watching the kids have a sensory overload is the worst thing ever. And you'd see in these comments of these other autistic people saying, oh, try having one. And then when I saw my child have a sensory overload for the first time, I'm like, no, this is worse. Like, when you're having a sensory overload, you just need to worry about you. You know what I mean? When your child having a sensory overload, you have to worry about the entire environment and everything that's going on. And I'm sorry, I love my child more than I love myself. And if I could take away every single sensory overload of theirs and make it my own, I would. And I was like,
Yeah.
So, yeah, watching your kids have a sensory overload is the worst thing.
Yeah,
So.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. Your transition from autism self-advocate to autism mom or autism mommy or autism martyr, like we get
Or
called
grievance
all the time.
parent.
Grievance parent is the new one. It's so cute.
I love it. I'm like, and people hate it when I'm like, yeah, I have grievances.
I
And
know.
they're like,
It's not that bad of a name. Like, go back to autism mommy. That one is annoying. But grievance parent, I mean, yeah, I have grievances.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
give me a break. I have grievances. Yes.
See how the world treats your child and then tell me you don't have grievances.
So, interesting. Yes, the self-advocates will talk about how awful the world is, you know. And when I say self-advocates, obviously I'm talking about a group of self-advocates, not everybody
select
does this.
few. The reality that me and Cindy really came to is the fact that it's not that many people that do this. It's just a loud group of people.
Yeah.
And, like, I think it's very hard, like, for us to have connected because of that loud group. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're talking about it right now, is, like, that loud group influenced the way we viewed each other before even meeting each other.
Yeah.
When it...
Right.
Not like that.
And you know, this loud group of autistic self-advocates will say things like, you know, we're not disabled. The world, disables us by not giving us our accommodations. It's not made for us. Capitalism is the problem. All these things. But yet when we have a grievance about our own children with autism, how is it any different for them? They're not living a different life than you are. They're not supported either. You're not supported.
Yeah.
Nobody's supported. So why do you get to be complaining about all these things, but yet we get called a name when we complain about the very same thing that they're complaining about?
I think it has to do a lot with misogyny, to be honest, because it's the fact that immediately if a woman complains, she's complaining for validation, not understanding. She's complaining for attention, not looking for solutions. Like, it's never, like, women are seen as, if we bring up anything negative, it must be attention seeking, like, and stuff like that. So brutally honest, what exactly about my mannerisms were you like, this girl, she's a
What?
like, my mannerisms, like, you saw me on TikTok. You're a terrible question.
I don't think you're so.
No, you didn't think I would, but when you first saw me, there was something you didn't like. Like, was it like a...
It was simply someone told me to not engage with you. Like, someone said,
Cool.
Don't engage with Kiki. She will likely, I don't know, have an issue with your video, putting your son online, and to not... I don't think that person even really knew you. And so I was like, okay. So anytime I'd see you, like, in my comments, I'd be like, oh no, Kiki found me.
She's coming to fight me.
Kiki's coming to set me straight. Oh no. Yeah. So that's really all it was. Where you really gained my trust. I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but is when I saw you talking about safety in the community, the online community. At the time, I had been embroiled in some kind of call out by a very young autistic creator. And, I didn't stop to look at what her follower count was, or I didn't even consider her age. I was just responding to something really, very genuinely cruel and dismissive. I was just reacting to that, which we could talk about another day, like another podcast, just how the how the internet community just really brings out people's trauma. You know, it's like a lot of people are just reacting from their own trauma. I did it a lot when I was first online, and I see people doing it today that don't recognize they're doing it, but I recognize it because I used to do it too. But I remember
Me
you
too.
saying, you know, is this person safe to be calling out? You know, are they, you know, a marginalized, you know, race? Are they, you know, what is their follower count? What's their age? And like you were the only person I was seeing talking about those safety measures, and I thought,
Yeah.
okay, you know what? There's something here. There's I really respected you. You gave me a reason to respect you, which a lot of people don't. I know that makes you so uncomfortable.
I don't know if you should respect me. I'm just kidding. No, I didn't know. I didn't know that. Do you want to know my reason?
What?
You remind me of my mom.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, like all the good things. Like my mom's like very blunt, very forward. She's not afraid to bring something up. Like, and that's the thing too. Like you'll bring up topics not in a way that you're saying you're right about the topic, but to present it to the entire community because you've always been really good about feedback. So you bring up an idea and be like, this is what I'm thinking. And then you'll have those open discussions with those who are willing, right? And it's like you're not afraid. And I feel like with Autism Advocate, see, a lot of people are scared to get dirty now. Like they're like, oh, I don't want to be canceled, or I don't want to be this, or I don't want to be that. And it's like, I'm sorry, if you're going to be an autism advocate, sooner or later you're going to have to get your hands dirty. That doesn't mean that like it's a malicious thing. It doesn't mean that you're purposely getting your hands dirty, but we need to be innovators to change systems, not just follow what's already in place. Know how you can hate that.
Well, a lot of people do. A lot of people hate both of us because we will have conversations online that people just don't want to have and are uncomfortable by, which is why we're doing this podcast. So we both do offline work as well, advocacy. You do work in Canada with an organization, nonprofit organization there, and you're on a board and give your input as an autistic adult, and work with some other groups. And then I, you know, have done some work. I went to DC with National Council on Severe Autism and did some advocacy there at the Capitol, which is a wonderful experience. And I'm currently working on ECT laws in California and hopefully the rest of the country. I mean, we know what the challenges are in the real world. And I think a lot of people online are talking about something very different when they even say high support needs, that they believe they have high support needs and things. I don't think a lot of them recognize, not everybody, but a lot of these later diagnosed and, you know, more verbally adept people don't exactly see the population that we work with and that we're talking about. People with late diagnosed autism, the concept of masking, all that stuff has really taken center stage in autism content online. What do you make of the people who tell you that you are privileged to be an early diagnosed autistic?
I think that there is certain situations where being early diagnosed would have been a privilege. A lot of these people who are saying this to me aren't even from the 90s, weren't born in the 80s. So right there, I'm like, no, like, it would be fine if they told their story and kept to their story and said, I believe I would have been privileged if I was an early diagnosed. That would have been a privilege for me. Yes, you had the prerequisites for that to be a privilege. And you can mourn the life that you didn't have or thought you couldn't have or anything like that. But to bring me in the situation, I find it very diminishing of individuality within the spectrum because they don't know my story. They don't know any of it. And even if it was true, which it's not true for me. But even if it was true, to walk up to somebody and determine that for them without hearing even 5 seconds of their stories is very dismissive. Like, I don't know, it's just rude. I'm like, leave me alone. Like, tell your story, I'll listen. If you made a video saying, oh, if I was early diagnosed, I would like give you like claps and stuff. Like, that's their journey. I think like a lot of late diagnosed have to be angry before they start learning and then realize that they would have never gotten diagnosed as per the criteria at that time. Like, you weren't missed, the criteria just wasn't that back in the 90s. Like,
yeah,
that was...
Well, and I think you get that more than Alex does. Like, I know I hear in general people say that anyone is early diagnosed is a privilege, but you know, if you said that to my son, that he's privileged to be early diagnosed, it's like, okay, so let's take a look at this. And I'm sure a lot of this is true for you. He was early diagnosed back when they obviously barely knew what autism even was. As I covered with his diagnosis, he was in a school that had absolutely no idea what to do with autism. He went through, years and years of not having anyone presume competence in him. He did not have access to general education because of said not, presuming competence. His entire history was looked at through the lens of disability and inability to have a fruitful life. These people who were not diagnosed in the 90s, in the 2000s or whatever, before this shift that is happening in the way we perceive disability and presuming competence, then he was already automatically set up for failure. So how in any way, in any world, any form, would that be a privilege? Because those people who did not have a diagnosis didn't go through all of those experiences. They were presumed competent. They had access to general education materials. A lot of these people have college degrees. So to compare the two is kind of asinine that they're even comparing the same experiences.
And the thing that I find interesting is the fact that, like, obviously I'm quote unquote successful. Like, whatever society deems that to be what it is. So I think a lot of people look at me and see like only this part of my life, because they only get like a small screenshot, and assumes that I am just doing fantastically well. Like everything worked for me and I did great and I learned speech and I'm, doing these strides, and it's like, it's not like that at all, but they just assume because of this that if I'm successful, that's what they could have been. And it's like, I don't know, like, change your mind of successful. I'm just happy.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. I'm just a happy person.
I mean, you're the person that I'll call and you're like, I'm sorry, I'm recovering from a meltdown in Best Buy. Give me a little bit. I'll call you back. I mean, you're still autistic. You still have challenges that you have to work on and overcome, in your life. Yeah.
And then the identity part, too, is like, I'll get a lot of times, I said, what exactly am I privileged on? I always ask them, I said, what exactly do you want from my life that you don't have? And they'll always say, well, you knew who you were. No, it wasn't like that. When you're given a label, like, these people searched for that label. They searched for it, they found it, they connected with it. I was given it, I was told that's who I am from as long as I can remember. Yep. It was always, this is what I have. You know what I mean? Like, it was never my decision. And I know it's not a decision in general, like, don't get me wrong, but it was never, like, I never had an acceptance. And it took me till, like, my late 20s for me to accept the fact I had autism. Because knowing and accepting it is two different things. I was like, now. And they're like, well, you had understanding, you could look it up, you could this, you could that. I'm like, first off, no, you couldn't. And second off, when you could, I was busy pretending that I didn't have it. So, like, I didn't have that. And it's so wild to me that you think that my disability is way better and suddenly becomes a privilege just because I know what it is. Like, all of a sudden, it's no longer about the services I didn't get or anything like that. It's all about, but you knew. I'm like, okay, like, I that didn't help me. Like, it didn't. It's like, your leg's broken, and the doctor comes in and goes, your leg's broken. You're like, cool, you want to cast it? And they're like, no, you should be happy. You know your leg's broken. Like, that's what it feels like. And I'm like, okay.
That's a great
analogy. I just don't understand it. I just don't get the narrative. And I've tried really hard to understand the other side, and I'm still going to try, but I'm just like, I don't know what you guys think my life is.
It's just very, very different worlds. You know, I see a lot of people that are late diagnosed talk about how it's great to just understand themselves better. Because, you know, they don't get any services. It's like, well, why do you want a diagnosis? Like, well, to understand myself better. And I love what you said about, you know, you and Alex didn't have a choice, you know, in a diagnosis. No. It was given to you because you were not thriving. You were not literally developing. That's why you had to have the diagnosis.
And it wasn't even thriving. It was, we weren't surviving.
Right.
Like, that diagnosis meant survival. It didn't even mean that we got, like, extra perks. We just got to, like, you know, survive.
And maybe that's really a good difference that people in the community, if we can give them anything to take away from this first episode, is we need to start talking about the difference between autistics who got the diagnosis to literally survive and the ones who get the diagnosis to literally thrive. And I know that there's a lot of discussion about suicide ideation in people who are late diagnosed, and I'm not here to dismiss any of that or diminish any of that. But it's used to say that their experience is just as serious as younger diagnosed. But the difference between those of like you and Alex is that, you know, you needed the diagnosis so that you had supports so that you didn't elope and run away or drown or or
become blind.
Yeah, because you're gouging your eyes out. Yeah. And
I looked it up. It's very common for autistic people to lose their vision from this type of behavior. Mm-hmm. So,
or I mean, just the sheer number of drownings that happen, you know, every day. You can look look online. You'll see another autistic child has drowned somewhere. You know, the banging their heads because of such severe sensory issues that they have to, you know, wear helmets or whatever because they'll literally cause themselves brain damage. You know, or they will be killed. I keep thinking I have to say unalived, but we're not on. We're not on TikTok, but we say unalived there to not get flagged. Hopefully we don't get flagged here. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube and other platforms. But, you know, there's ways that they can be killed by the hands of other people that we also have to recognize. And so it's not like, oh, early diagnosed are struggle, but they've serviced, and then there's late diagnosed who are not serviced, but they unalive themselves. I mean, it's not even fair to compare because early diagnosed are dying too. You know, nobody gets to have the you know the trophy on deaths. You know, let's just talk about how there's deaths happening everywhere and abuse happening on both sides. So that to use that unaliving because we need a late diagnosis is a little bit dismissive.
Yeah, it's a one-up thing. Like, if it was presented in a way, because I get it all the time in my comments, that, like, I knew, I understood, so I didn't have suicide or ideation. And I'm like, who are you talking to? Like, I'm on so much antidepressant meds. like, honestly, like that's wild, and it's the dismissive part of it. It's the dismissive part that like early diagnosed do not suffer at all from suicidal ideation. That autism does have a high comorbidity rate with depression, and it's something that the whole community needs to be looked out for, not just one population. But yeah.
So, if we had ideas, you know, if we wanted to share ideas on how we feel like the community could be more cohesive, you know, and understanding of each other, I can think of a couple of ways that would happen. One would be groups like Autism Self-Advocacy Network. I wasn't sure if I was going to say it, but I'm going to say it. Didn't speak on the experiences of people with high support needs that cannot advocate for themselves. Some of the things that they say I find to be incredibly harmful and dismissive. If they were not trying to speak for the whole community and they were only speaking for themselves, I would feel much more inclined to be an ally of theirs, to help them if I felt like they were helping my son. But instead, I feel like they're actually saying things that are not helpful for him because they're dismissing families and what they need and only focusing on themselves. So, you know, people say, well, we have to work together. It's like, okay, I would work with this group. I would be happy to work with this group and advocate together if they weren't taking talking points that shouldn't be theirs, like nonverbal communication and guardianship and things like that. Some of the things that they say are wildly inappropriate for our group, our population.
But the problem right now is like this is a very constructive criticism for them, right? Like that is constructive criticism. It's like if you want to be interested in the entire community and collecting more allyship, etc., like this would be something to think about or state. But the reality is they are protected by a whole bunch of like social media kind of people. I don't know how to explain it. Like, for example, I got into this disagreement with this one person, and this one person's like, oh, you said something bad about ASON once. And I was like, yeah, it's an organization. You can criticize them. You know, like I'm not criticizing anyone within it. I'm not doing this or that. I've said stuff about Autism Speaks. I've said stuff about ASON. I've said stuff about the National Council of Severe Autism. I said stuff about the Autism Center. Like, what they wrote about not supporting GPS is problematic. There is lots of autistic people who benefit from GPS.
Trackers. Yeah.
So, yeah, trackers. Or letting people know, like, for example, there's programs where you can tell your local police that in your house you have a child with autism, so that if a police is called to the house, they are aware of it. And they're also against that, which is like, it's a voluntary program. Chillax. Like, you're going too hard, in my opinion. But then there's other stuff that they used to do that I supported. Like, when the PETA commercial came out and PETA was saying that milk caused autism, they were the ones who pressured PETA to take down their billboards and take down all that, right? So they've done good stuff. But that doesn't mean we just stop. Like, I don't understand why they're protected from criticism, but no other organization is. Like,
yeah.
Like, that, and I think that's a big thing. Like, perfect for this podcast, the Off Limits thing, is that we need to have these discussions and stop shutting people down immediately, because if we're going to work together, we're going to have these tough conversations and realize where we agree and disagree and be okay with that. So.
Yes. Way to work the title in. I'm proud of you. All right. You got any last questions for me before we wrap up today?
Yeah. Not really a last question, but I have a comment kind of from earlier about like stuff that people say to me as an early diagnosed. And I just wanted to bring it up to get your opinion on it. So like the privilege thing, like people always say I'm privileged. it's annoying, don't get me wrong, but I've got a script. I'm like, hey, like, just because would be appropriate for you doesn't mean for me. Let me tell my story, right? But the part that I just have so hard scripting is when people tell me that they're late diagnosed because they were hot. It creeps me out, and I don't know how to not sound, because the only thing I have to fight back with that makes them sound bad, which I don't want to. Like, I don't want to shut down the conversation, but I want to be like, yeah, the doctor thought I was ugly at 2. Like, the doctor's like, this one's not going to be hot.
That, yes, that pretty privilege protected them from getting a diagnosis. Yes, that is a common thing.
Yeah. They're flat out calling me ugly, and they're flat out saying that my doctor determined if I was pretty or not.
Well, you are hot, I will tell you.
And honestly, I know that there is pretty privilege. Do not get me wrong. Yeah. I understand that. But when it comes to 3-year-olds being diagnosed with no other visible, qualities, it's not like, what?
Yeah. It just shows that we're working in very different worlds again. I guess especially girl. Alex was freaking adorable. I'm sorry. He was an adorable 3-year-old. And that didn't help him at all. I mean, he certainly, he is a guy, but which I know everyone's going to say it's easier for a guy to get the diagnosis. But he didn't have the aggression. I think you mentioned that in a video the other day. Like Alex didn't have. You guys are kind of like the opposite presentations. He had more of the quote unquote girl autism, and you had the quote unquote boy autism.
But I feel like that's why I want to spend time with Alex too, is because he's the opposite. I feel like if I hung out with somebody like me, that we would set each other off all the time, if that makes sense. But with Alex, he's just so chilled, like, and calm, and like, you know what I mean? Yeah. That I don't think that he would set off my autism. I shouldn't say it like that, but set off a sensory overload or vice versa, because we're just opposites. So,
yeah. What are some other topics that we will be talking about in this podcast that are considered off limits in the community, and in media too?
Yeah, I think we'll have a lot of conversation about nuances around certain therapies. APA.
You can say it here.
I think it's all okay. Therapies. Yeah, right. When we're both ready, we'll probably talk about facilitated communication. We'll probably talk about ECT a little bit.
For sure.
I think the great part is, like, we'll do it when we're comfortable. And when we do, we'll have our thoughts together, and we can visit it multiple times after getting input from our audience, which would be nice, because we can visit, like, ECT twice. So we'll talk about it. You guys give us your opinion, and then we can talk about it again, go through some comments. So the good thing is it's going to be a forever conversation. Like, this is the beginning, but it's going to be a forever conversation with multiple people where we're going to learn and they're going to teach us. So maybe we'll even talk about topics we didn't even know exist until someone puts it in the comments. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to talk about a lot of abuse on here. That sounded terrible when I'm like, a lot of abuse. But, like, with Alex, and it is. With Alex being vulnerable and the type of abuse he's had and the type of abuse that I've had, and kind of the abuse around being silent and the triggering factors of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Stairs. No?
Yeah, I definitely think that we'll also be talking about how history gets changed. I currently have someone in, my neck of the woods changing Alex's history just for attention and not correcting it. And, it's really harmful. It's harmful to mess with our stories because they're really important. It's really important what happened to Alex and to you in the 90s and the 2000s. Yep. And the current wave of, autism advocacy is erasing all of that history, and we're here to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and they're repeating the negative part. Like, they're a lot more subtle than they was in the 90s, but they're repeating the same stuff they did in the 90s. They really are. Like, when they say stuff or change Alex's story to use it for their own agenda to push forward or elevate themselves, that was constantly how we were treated as children by professionals, because they wanted something to show off for their work.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I think that's going to be a big one. And I think also talking about misinformation and disinformation that everyone has, because there's so much disinformation about how it happened. They want to make a clickbaity video instead of going into specifics about it. So
I think talking about how the media, not even social media, the media prefers the feel-good stories. You know, if we have something to root for, and it feels good, then it makes good content on media. It's a little less popular and common to have stories of people really truly struggling, which is a lot of people in the autism community. And one of the things that I like to emphasize, and this has grown throughout my years of advocacy, is, you know, there is a whole huge swath of people in the middle that are not even feeling talked about. I mean, we have autistic self-advocates who are, you know, with college degrees. A lot of them do at Autism Self-Advocacy Network. You know, if you look at their list, most of them have a college degree, you know, and they're speaking on behalf of the autism community. And then we have parents like me who have, you know, very disabled children and really struggle to just stay alive in the world and get the services that they need. And, you know, there's people in the middle that I hear from. I hear it from them on Reddit. I hear from them in my DMs or whatever. And they are like, thank you so much for ever talking about us. Those in the middle who have medium support needs or even low support needs, who still feel spoken for. You know, they feel like the conversation has just been taken from them by these loud self-advocates. And they're like, I mean, because if you look at the DSM and you see level 1 of support needs, it still says needs support to function in their life. And, you know, a lot of the self-advocacy right now is just focused on a much different message with the you know, social model of disability. We'll definitely be talking about the models of disability and how
because there's more than just those models, and a lot of people don't realize that.
So, you know, definitely making them feel included on topics that can't be discussed online.
Yeah, like, and I think that's the thing too. Like, if you guys take anything away from this podcast, it's the fact that we want to hear from you. We are not trying to be the voice or center only our voices in our story. We want to start building an environment where everybody can feel heard if they're able. And I do understand that there's parents out there who can barely return a phone call, let alone comment or keep up with the latest autism news. So also trying to meet everybody where they're at. So we're releasing this on several platforms and having it in audio or visual so you guys can just listen to it, put it one earbud in, whichever way. And if you think of any way to make it more accessible, just let us know. We have a great IT person.
The dog?
No, it's you. Oh. But my dog's probably better at IT than I am, so, like, in all fairness, that is my IT person. Sets up a printer faster than I do.
Yeah. Well, we want to set up some emails, you know, for different emails where people can send in your questions. We'd love to hear from professionals. We'd love to hear from parents, self-advocates alike. I mean, we really do want to start conversations here that are off limits on other platforms. So,
yeah, and you can also send anonymously. So if you don't feel comfortable with your asking a question and being publicly asked, just let us know it's anonymous, and I will tell everybody. No, I'm just joking.
Thankfully, I have the mute button, not Kiki. You're too much. Kiki, you are too much. You're entirely too much, and I love you for it. And I'm looking forward to doing this with you. It's been a joy learning more about you over the last couple of years since we've become friends.
Same here.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you, Kiki, for spending time with me today. I'm glad we were able to finally record this. We both have very busy lives and things are happening in life, but we really wanted to set aside some time and do this together. Just so, this will be the first of many.
And thank you, because you're gonna do all the editing and all the work after this.
It's okay. I actually enjoy it.
You do a great job.
All right. Well, thank you for joining in today, and we look forward to bringing more content your way and having more discussions about the things in the community that are autism off limits.
I think that should be the end, by the way.
I think so too.
I was like, well, you want me to be
I was trying to figure out how to end this. So yeah, I think